Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Can someone shake their head and say that they can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to Watershed Wednesday. I'm Lydia Brinkley, the riparian buffer coordinator for the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. Watershed Wednesdays are hosted by the Upper Susquehanna Coalition and the Otsego County Conservation Association. These weekly sessions are taking the place of the Upper Susquehanna Watershed Forum for 2020 since we are unable to meet in person. We currently just have one more session scheduled for 2020, and that's next week. The schedule and title will be posted at the end of today's session. If you have questions during today's session, please place them in the chat box. Without further ado, our topic this week is titled Valuing Our Kettle Lakes, and it will be delivered by several presenters. Tarki Heath from the Cortland-Onondaga Federation of Kettle Lakes Associations and the New York State Federation of Lake Associations, among just two of her hats. Meredith Perreault from Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. And finally, Colleen Zawadsky from the Tully Lake Property Owners Association will all participate in delivering today's topic. The Kettle Lakes in Cortland and Onondaga County have some similar and unique water quality challenges with many partners involved in their conservation. So with that, I'll turn it over to you ladies.
Okay, thank you, Lydia. So I just want to thank the Upper Susquehanna Coalition for providing this opportunity for us to present today. And I just want to also let you know how much we value what you share with us and how you help us in our endeavors. So thank you. And I am Tarki Heath, and I do wear a lot of hats, and today I'm here for the Kettle Lake Associations. So as most of you probably know, we're at the headwaters of the Susquehanna River in the Chesapeake Bay. This is a map that we borrowed from the Finger Lakes Land Trust, and it shows our Kettle Lakes right up here at the headwaters going into the West Branch of the Cheoffneoga. But it's really it's a very unique area, and we are four of several Kettle Lakes that do span across Cortland and Onondaga counties. These four are represented here because we are members of COFOCLA, and we do work together quite a bit through the year. We're all small watersheds. We were formed at the same time as the Finger Lakes, but we are the little chunks of ice that came off the glaciers as they retreated. So we have some deep pools, but for the most part, we're shallow. And we do work together. We have some common issues. We also have individual issues, but we still work together to help each other, even on those individual issues. So here are some of our shared concerns. And it includes the growing number of aquatic invasive species. It's probably one of our biggest concerns right now, is the proliferation of those invasive species through all of our lakes. Climate change, which we can't do much about, but we can try to mitigate some of the activity that might occur during intense storms and the runoff from that. We all have, to some degree, an abundance of plants or algae that are growing and causing issues. Each of us have had harmful algal blooms, and the cyanobacteria have been identified, and there's different species in each of our lakes, so it's not all the same. Stormwater runoff from development and agriculture, and we're going to talk about stormwater from developments around our lakes during this session. We do try to promote implementation of the best management practices, and we have done a lot of outreach, and our efforts to do that, of course, like everyone's, have been a bit stifled this year, but having an opportunity like this to go virtual really means a lot to continue those efforts. We will talk about challenges from keyholing development, water quality issues, and other things like development from undesirable infrastructure. And this isn't just a myth. We actually did have to work together to stop a propane farm facility from going in between, at the end of Song Lake. And I'm going to turn it over to Meredith, and she's going to talk about our watershed implementation plans. Oh, Meredith. There you go.
Yep, got it. Good morning, everybody. My name is Meredith Perreault. I'm a program manager with the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. I've had the good fortune of working with the Cortland-Onondaga Federation of Kettle Lake Associations and the Upper Susquehanna Coalition in the capacity of technical assistance and assisting with training opportunities. And it's been super rewarding for me and the center that I work for. I want to talk briefly about a project that we worked on in 2017. I'm going to post a link for everybody. There we go. What I want to talk about is the watershed planning in the Kettle Lakes watershed. We worked with a number of partners to prepare watershed implementation plans to recommend projects that reduce harmful stormwater impacts, reduce nutrients in and around the Kettle Lakes, in the Kettle Lakes watershed. And I wanted to acknowledge that this was through a funding source, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation technical capacity grant for Chesapeake Bay Stewardship, which I'm sure you guys are all quite familiar with, as the Upper Susquehanna Coalition is very closely involved with National Fish and Wildlife Foundation as well. And we partnered with the Cortland County Soil and Water Conservation District, with COFOCLA, and with Princeton Hydro, which is based in New Jersey, to prepare 4 watershed implementation plans for Tully Lake, Song Lake, Crooked Lake, and for Little York Lake in Cortland County. And I just wanted to say too, right quickly, that these WIPs, they are available on the COFOCLA website, which I've posted in the chat box. And then I can pass it over to Colleen, who's going to talk about some of the projects that came out of the WIPs. That was part of the purpose of the WIPs, is to propose projects that could be implemented in the Kettle Lakes watershed. And Colleen can give us some examples. Well, and Colleen, you're muted too.
Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Zawodzki. I'm the president of the Tully Lake Property Owners Association. Tully Lake is about 6,500 acres in our watershed, and the actual lake itself is about 226 acres. It is one of the few lakes that I can think of in New York State that straddles 2 counties. So it's between Cortland County and Onondaga County. So depending on where the residents live and their shorescaping ideas, we support the work with our partners in those water conservation districts. As you can see in this picture, we began our first landshore landscaping project that we're calling on our lake shorescaping in 2018. We began with 2 properties that were very expansive at the shoreline, and we looked at creating a bit of a rubric with the Upper Susquehanna Coalition to create property shorescaping projects that would benefit the lake. So the goal was to reduce storm runoff, improve water quality, diminish phosphorus that would be going into the lake from some of the turf lawns that you might see on shorelines. And this particular one in the image had an expansive shoreline, and it had a significant slope. So in that property, we did a lot of buffering along the shoreline using a variety of perennial shrubs and bushes with our partners. And the partners for that year were Cortland-Onondaga Federation of Kettle Lakes Association. So we work closely with all the COFOCLA lakes, Onondaga County Soil and Water Conservation District. The Upper Susquehanna Coalition provided us with a lot of the design, implementation, designing, and working with each of the family residents that had the shoreline that was going to be a project. And we had Onondaga Earth Corps come in and actually do the planting with us. And over the last 3 years, we've gotten more and more interest in these projects because Tully Lake has been getting more and more harmful algal bloom breakouts, particularly planktothrix. So you can see the before and after. And what we ended up doing in the second year is we ended up removing a tire retention wall. Tarki mentioned contaminants of emerging concern study that we had, and we started to notice vulcanization, some rubber, trace amounts of rubber in the lake. So we removed a very old, probably 55-year-old tire wall and replaced that with dwarf osier, dogwood, and some other plants at that shoreline. In the next slide, you will see that another project in the WIPS was the Crooked Lake tributary. And if you look at the example of that graph that shows the actual altitude, Song Mountain actually is a property along the tributary that empties into Crooked Lake. And there was some turbid runoff of concern to the residents of Crooked Lake. So working with Onondaga County Soil and Water Conservation District, and once again, the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. They work very closely with the Crooked Lake Homeowners Association and the other CAFOCLA partners to begin to design a bit of a buffer along that tributary that would begin to intercept some of the storm runoff that would be going down from Song Mountain, which is a major ski resort in our community, into Crooked Lake. So we're very pleased that that seems to be a very successful partnership. In the next slide, you will see here that there is a expansive floodplain, and that particular area that's being shown in this image is at Dwyer Park. And that is an area where a 1 acre buffer was planted with small trees, about 260 of them, to actually begin to improve the habitat in the area and filter excess nutrition that would be going into the upper end of Little York Lake, where that area empties into. So with that planting, they did some things that would protect the small trees. They put some tubes around them and some weed mats, but they did work about 1 acre in that floodplain to create a riparian buffer that would act as a way to filter runoff and improve water quality going into the southern Kettle Lakes. About 500 feet of shoreline was planted there. In the next slide, you'll see that actually at the forefront of a lot of our practices in both of our counties come from our farm families, because they really are important stewards in protecting our watershed. And one particular on the farm practice that I'm going to refer to in this slide is the practice of actually planting cover crops, which are used to stabilize erosion, to keep the soil intact during the winter season, to diminish runoff, to add a lot of benefit and organic matter to the soil itself so the soil is healthier. But I think the most important thing to remember with cover crops is they actually hold that soil in place. I know on Tully Lake we get some of these massive spring rains, and we are always worried that our farm families to the side of us could potentially be running off into the south end of our lake. So the partners for this particular area of concentration would be our actual agricultural partners, Cortland Soil and Water Conservation District, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and then once again, the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. So we are very pleased with that opportunity as well.
Thank you. Okay. It takes a village to get me to do the right thing. So this document was produced through Upper Susquehanna Coalition this summer, and it was distributed through all of our watersheds and the region. And all of the projects that Colleen referred to are detailed in here as well. And that's available on the Upper Susquehanna Coalition website as well. Okay, back to challenges and opportunities. Managing invasive species, land conservation practices, and water quality management. One of the projects that we were involved with that was supported by the Cortland County Soil and Water District was to train watercraft stewards throughout the county at boat launch sites to provide signage and to outreach to different communities. And we were very involved with the program with the schools at Camp Awada, probably 3 years running. We now have that particular educational piece on a website, and we also have a website through social media. So working with our partners here, the Stop the Invasion in Cortland County, our message to about, over the years, 2,000 fifth graders, and went out to teach them about clean, drain, and dry, and how to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. So COFOCLA was involved with this. SUNY ESF, this is Professor Kim Schultz presenting with us at one of the classes, and the Finger Lakes Institute, PRISMS. So we are all members of NYSFOLA, the New York State Federation of Lake Associations, and their program with the New York State DEC is CSLAP, the Citizen Statewide Lake Assessment Program. Through this program, we have baseline parameters for our water quality that includes nitrogen testing, phosphorus testing, chlorophyll A. You can see the Secchi disc reading here, which gives us water quality. We have temperature readings and so on. We also, through this program, test for harmful algal blooms, and we do site observations. And we have, this is done 8 times during the open water season. We're also partnered with the Finger Lakes Prisms. We do rake tosses so that we can identify what species of plants are in our lake, and if we find anything that's suspicious as an invasive. We work with SUNY College of Environmental Forestry and Science, as I mentioned. We have ongoing limnology projects with them. We also work with SUNY Oneonta, and we have a great watershed management plan for 3 of our Kettle Lakes through SUNY Oneonta. And of course, Syracuse University, which I already mentioned, for the contaminants of emerging concern. Each of those reports are available on the NYSFOLA website and through the DEC website. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Meredith.
Thanks, Tarki. And I'm going to do a quick post here for another link. This is to the Upper Susquehanna Coalition, the Kettle Lakes page, which has the newsletter that Tarki referenced, and also a link to a survey that we created. That's in the chat box. And I wanted to touch on, following on talking about the various challenges, but also opportunities, and part of the tools in the toolbox of protecting water quality. I wanted to touch on land conservation. Both land conservation and zoning practices can protect water quality, both in streams and in lakes in our watershed like this. Land conservation is mostly practiced through either private land trust organizations or state land protection, and conservation can have a lot of different meanings, but I'm talking about in terms of like physically setting land into open space status or protected status where it won't be developed. So that's what I mean. And private nonprofit land trust organizations that are organizations that work with landowners and can protect land in a number of different ways. The photo that you see is Tracy Lake in Onondaga County. It's one of the Kettle Lakes, and Tracy Lake is protected by a preserve that surrounds much of that lake, a bio-nature preserve that Central New York Land Trust manages, owns and manages. So there's a number of different ways that land trust organizations can work to protect land. And the nice thing about this is, as you can imagine, is that direct protection, buffer creation right there on the water that protects water quality. but land conservation practices with land trust organizations and various state mechanisms too can also be interesting to other landowners, to farmers, to landowners on streams. There's a number of tools there that are really useful. Then I want to touch on quickly one of the challenges, keyholing, which is the lower illustration you see in the lower right corner on this slide. Keyholing is a development practice where multiple properties use one lake access point. And this can, so a development can go in, good number of houses, they're all using one spot to access a lake. On little lakes, this can overwhelm a lake's carrying capacity. So one of the tools is zoning, working with a town to put in zoning ordinances that discourage a practice like this that could really jeopardize water quality for everyone. And just to note that both towns of Tully and the town of Preble have ordinances that prohibit keyholing as a practice. So I think next slide. So to wrap up today, to wrap up our presentation and hopefully have a chance to talk a little bit more with questions with you all. One of the things that we want to point out that as you can guess, it takes a lot of partners to work on water quality protection, something you all already well know, but we wanted to emphasize that the Kettle Lakes watershed is a really good example of many partners working together and making a lot of really neat progress. So in general, I'd want to say that landowners, municipal officials, and highway departments are invited to work with the Upper Susquehanna Coalition and the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, but also too with organizations like COFOCLA and individual lake associations to embark on water quality technical assistance and project implementation, and then as well with land trust organizations for land conservation mechanisms that can also protect water quality. So I think one of our main takeaways today is that these partnerships can really help make things happen for water quality protection. In other words, we really think it's doable. Water quality protection is doable with a dedicated coalition of organizations working together. So again, inviting everybody to look at those websites and also extending our thank yous and our contact information on this last slide.
Yep.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you so much. Yes. Folks, if you have questions, please pop them into the chat so that we can make sure they get asked. It was a very thorough presentation.
I have a question.
Lydia, go ahead.
I'm wondering, is there a lot of opportunity, or do you hear of or see a lot of opportunity to do more of land preservation, like you were talking about, Meredith, with land trusts? Do you see opportunity for that?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I wonder if Tarki or Colleen have been talking to Lakeshore residents and if you all have talked about this. I mean, I can see opportunities, but I think it really takes some landowner engagement and education, and so that folks know that there's different options there. That might be worth some local presentations for folks to learn more about those various tools. But I wonder if Tarki and Colleen have any thoughts about that.
So my only thought would be that I know that the Central New York Land Trust and the Finger Lakes Land Trust are very active and very approachable. So, I mean, if you do have questions, I would definitely reach out to them directly.
Absolutely. And just to add out in this direction, the Otsego County Land Trust, same thing. So
yes.
Yep,
okay,
yep.
Thank you.
So absolutely. And we do have a question. So this is from Mandy. What are the short-term WQ trends in Kettle Lakes, and about how many years of WQ data do you have?
So I can try to answer that. There's some of it that I know and some I don't. Some of our lakes have more data than others because we've been involved with the CSLAP program for longer than others. I know Song Lake's data goes back, I live on Song Lake, goes back, to the 50s and so forth. Now there's intermittent off times, but there's quite a big, good collection of data there. The trends, we're warming. The lakes are getting hotter. There's less ice. I mean, these are pretty obvious observations over time, but we do have the data also to show that. The other thing that we see, along with that comes some changes internally in terms of dissolved oxygen levels when the lakes are turning. So those trends can be seen. And then we also have the aquatic invasive species, which are just spreading prolifically through our lakes, and they also cause changes in the water quality. And harmful algal blooms, which Colleen mentioned, Planktothrix on her lake, we have on Song Lake 3 different, Kenya and others that do create toxic situations from time to time, at least along the shoreline. So I would say, yeah, those are the trends that we see. I don't know if you have anything to add, Colleen.
Sure. Something that I would add is we noticed after the contaminants of emerging concern data that Tully Lake over the last few years seems to be developing more and more road salt runoff. The saline level of the lake is being kind of imbalanced a little bit, which is why this year's project focuses on a bank along the shoreline of Hoffman Road, where we put in a lot of dwarf osier to try to catch some of that saline, that road salt, before it entered the lake. There are other kinds of things that small lakes with aging septic systems would have if people are throwing medications in their toilet or whatever. Those kind of smaller trace level things that over many, many years could become problematic, like plastics and coffee and things like that become contaminants over time. They can become incremental. But I think echoing what Tarki said, for us, the aquatic invasive weeds causing all that lack of circulation in the lake, along with natural things like overabundance of beavers and things like that. When you don't have circulation and you have warming waters and you have high nutritional loads, hopefully people will desire. And this kind of goes back to conservation and keeping things natural, trying to get our lakeshore residents to value things that don't look like golf course lawns, trying to create a more natural shoreline. It doesn't just look more beautiful, but it really is protective of the lake and the ecosystem.
So, and I see that Maddie is also asking about nitrogen trends, and that's right. That's also what we see. That nitrogen trends are actually going in a more positive direction, and there seems to be less of that as an issue. Phosphorus, it is also less in certain cases. We still have a legacy of phosphorus in our lakes, in the sediments. So there's still internal loading that occurs because it's not necessarily coming from stormwater runoff, but it's already in the lakes, and then it's released. So that's another trend that we see.
All right, and I think we have quickly we have time for one more. What is the percentage of agricultural land use in the Kettle Lake watershed?
Oh, good question. I don't have a quick answer. I think it's there are in the WIPs. You can look at each of our Kettle Lakes, and it shows the agricultural distribution around it, and it's different. I think Little York Lake probably has the highest level of inputs from agriculture. Probably Tully Lake would be next. Song Lake has very little at this point.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for this great presentation. I have shared our very last Watershed Wednesday. So next week will be our last one for 2020. Answering the so what question, a workshop on landowner attitude about riparian conservation. So I think it'll be very interesting. And everyone is welcome to join us next week at 9:30 a.m. Bring your coffee, and thank you so much for joining us today and for your great presentation. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.